Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in once again the Duval Dive here in full effect, even though it's the alleged off season. I say alleged because if you haven't learned by now, the NFL doesn't stop, which means the Duval Devout get their weekly service of Duval Dive action. And hey, listen, speaking of, let's say, tributary action, for lack of a better way to put it, let us be among the last to wish you a happy Independence here. Of course, July 4th was yesterday. I hope you got your fill of barbecue fireworks and all that other stuff. No, like barbecue, fireworks. Like barbecue fireworks, that just sounds really dangerous, and I wouldn't recommend you try that at home. But listen, got a heck of a docket for you here today. Looking for hidden gems among the Jacksonville Jaguar roster. Other people may be like, but Kyle, people were talking about the most underrated Jaguar. Well, apparently a lot of people think the player can be underrated, even though you've spent the entire offseason talking about them. Looking at you, John Shipley. Shouts to my editor, Jaguars on his side. Bing. We'll get more into that later, of course, in the back half of the show, but also with all the talk of calling plays and whether it should be Press Taylor, whether it should be Doug Peterson. Even owner Shad Khan is getting into the conversation. I figure it'd be best to let our local analyst, Travis D. Holmes, take care of that. But speaking of my personal champion, let's get him jumped in here from Big Cat Country, Travis D. Holmes. What's going on, champion? How you doing?
I am doing well. As you can see, I am a whole new man. I am no longer being lazy with the manscaping, and you can see my face. Like this is a great Independence Day for us all. Happy birthday, America! Happy birthday to my face and you guys being introduced finally after a few weeks.
Happy birthday to my face. Travis's face getting rebirth. By the way, speaking of, celebrating America and all that, the most recent version that would best affect the Jaguars, I could argue, in terms of local government approving the new stadium, bam, democracy in effect. You can't front on that, I'm sure. But listen, while some things are a democracy within capitalism, some things are a dictatorship. And finding out who calls plays is a decision that somebody out there has to make, whether it'll be Press Taylor, whether it'll be Doug Peterson himself, has been a topic of ample discussion amongst the devout. And listen, I'll put it this way. I know that Shad Khan was asked the question. I'm not going to say if he gave a non-answer, but he gave an answer an owner should if he's going to even comment.
Right.
Which the argument should be that he shouldn't have. I get that point of view too. But, I mean, let me ask you point blank. It's not so much – I'm pretty sure you've stated somewhere or on this show that you would prefer Doug Peterson call the plays. But kind of walk me through what the pros and cons – like. First of all, why would anybody want to consider Press Taylor to call the plays instead of Doug? What are the pros if that actually happens?
Okay, so the pros of that happening is you have a consistent main primary voice giving you the information, giving you the plays in the way that they would prefer to give it to you. There is some benefit to that. I mean, again, at the end of the season, when asked his personal opinion on it, Trevor Lawrence, the person who's directly getting the communication from the person who creates the offense, stated that he would like the consistency of having Press continue to call plays. That's what he tells you. And obviously, if you're a smart quarterback, you're probably not going to say I would prefer a change, because that's also a rough offseason of conversation in and of itself. But nevertheless, if I'm going to believe him based on what he said, based on his words, then maybe he wants that consistency of having the same, again, that same voice, that one band, one sound, situation continuing to go on into his second season. Again, this is someone who's had to switch offensive coordinators, who had to switch passing game coordinators multiple occasions throughout his NFL trek so far. And again, he's 3 years in, entering his fourth season. So from that perspective, hey, maybe he's like, this wasn't the issue last season. Our issues were drop passes. Our issues were fumbles, were tip balls, were the miscommunications because I wasn't practicing. Press wasn't the issue. You guys are making them like this could all simply be his perspective, his thought process in that. And I can't necessarily argue heavily against that, if that is a true representation of what your QB1, the person, again, getting this communication from Press Taylor, thinks. And if that's truly the case, then cool. You know what? Let's go with that. On the other side of the coin, you have someone who is historically, or at least over the past decade or so, been considered a top 5 play caller in the NFL. Uh, I know some people say that's arguable because whatever. Whether it's top 5, whether it's top 10, a top play caller in the NFL, Doug Peterson,
Yeah,
because
let's not put a rank on it
quote unquote quarterback whisperer.
because I would push back on the top 5 thing, but I mean, the dude is of some renowned out there, right? This is a guy
Correct.
that got something out of Carson Wentz before it was cool, and before the Mercedes Wentz, as I used to call him, ended up beyond repair in the junkyard, right? So I get that part of it, and we can, he wrote a book, the Super Bowl, beat the blah 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 blah. We could go on. I don't know about top 5, but that could be
Whether yeah, whether it's top 5, whether it's top 10, when the media talks to him and ask him about calling plays, it has come up on multiple occasions just this offseason. Hey, you are a top play caller in the NFL. That's the framing of the question.
right.
So again, that's why I'm not trying to push back heavily on that. Wherever he lands in that conversation, that's not even the point of all of this. The point is he seems to be a top play caller, or be widely considered across the league as a top play caller in the NFL. And he's not calling plays. But you have to do a full stop right there. And that's the piece that where I'm like, this is actually an argument for press to call plays, and many people don't necessarily view it from that direction. And I want to just get some. I want to dig into that just for a second.
Sure.
Have you ever been so good? And I'm talking not just to you, Mr. Student of the Game, Kyle Nash. I'm talking to everyone listening, everyone watching America. Have you ever been so good at something? Yeah. Have you ever been so good at something that you never wanted to be known as? And what I mean is, like, have you ever been just great at, I don't know, selling vector knives in college, or doing this thing, and then you're like, I'm so good at this. Like, I am great. I'm known around the city as this person. And it wasn't even something that you necessarily wanted to do. Many people don't know my history. For a 2-year time frame back in 2010, I led the nation in sales for mortgage loans and auto loans in Wells Fargo. Like, I was great at doing this, and I hated it. I never wanted to be that thing that I became known as, and I ended up leaving the company on top. Like, it's so when I say this, I'm like, well, is there an argument to be made that maybe Doug Peterson doesn't want to be known as this great play caller and simply wants to be known as a great head coach, and he wants to build his own tree with Press Taylor? Like, he's kind of shown us these actions. Like, I would like Press Taylor to be the play caller in Philadelphia. I would like Press Taylor to be the play caller in Jacksonville, because I want my own tree. I don't want to just be known as the guy who can call plays and I can do it when I'm doing it. I want to be the guy who's able to be older and age in this game and just lead an NFL team. And if that's how Doug possibly feels, do you want this guy happen to have this conflict of image, and I want to have to compare my legacy to whether or not I want to win this year? Like, that could be what it comes down to, if you know what I mean.
I mean, if he was in a position where he was wanting to apply to be a college coach after the NFL, I could see that, but that's a very unique thing. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's ridiculous. I just, if he is that guy, there's not a lot of people out there that fit that acumen. That being said, the public at large out there knowing that, I would wonder, like, just as an example, if Bill Walsh was that kind of dude that, handled the business and was known for being this offensive great, but eventually down the line, how much weight you have to carry day to day, sharing some of that labor, if you can find the right balance, is the kind of thing that extends out one's career and a team's success, because there's better happiness and well-being. I mean, the argument, you mentioned a former Eagles coach as we talk of Doug Peterson. What about what Andy Reid has done with both Eric Bieniemy and Matt Nagy, right? Share those offensive duties, so to speak, but he's somebody who's known as a great coach in and of itself. I know that's not a perfect analogy.
Right, because Andy's still been calling these plays for the most part. And even when you find out that he didn't call the plays, it kind of becomes an argument of, no, actually, he kind of was calling the plays, and it becomes the whole Press Taylor Doug situation again.
His hand is on the joystick, but somebody's holding the controller. I feel like is kind of the best way to describe what's going on in Kansas City there. And it's not a perfect analogy there. That's the best
I got you
on the fly, but something for reducing the heavy, ridiculous workload of an NFL coach, a football coach making any sort of real money at a high level. I should say, like, we mere mortals cannot appreciate the kind of time and devotion that they put in. And you know, that, for example, let's get back to Urban Meyer and why he failed. Listen, if I took an axe to my coaxial cable, that would be less disconnected than Urban Meyer was, right? You know,
Herbs was trying to throw out the whole playbook in week 4 after a loss to what was it, the Houston. Like Herbs was ready just to flip everything just because they lose a few games. So like that was a wild boy. That was just a wild boy, man. So he's a great example.
Hey, that guy 99 on the Rams, he's pretty good. You never heard of Aaron Donald? I can guarantee you, Andy Reid and Coach Peterson know who Aaron Donald is. Just saying.
Yeah, it's like just so overall, my general point is if you have someone who feels that they've created the system that is going to work best to make a simpler offense for the quarterback, and you have a quarterback who potentially could feel that, no, this wasn't the problem. The problem was me getting injured and not practicing, and so we're just not on the same page. It caused these 5 to 8 turnovers, and we dropped all these balls. But that's on the field stuff. That's not offensive coordinator issues. Right. And we had an issue running the ball. Like all these other things, that's not Press Taylor specific issues. I can understand the argument that we should stick with Press Taylor. It's consistent, it's good, and it's fine because we're still running Doug's system and we're good on that. And also, Doug doesn't have to call plays because Doug would prefer to be giving his, overall shape to the team, giving his overall message to the team and handling from that perspective. I don't think that's a bad argument, but I can also understand if your life's on the line, if your legacy potentially is on the line, you might want to take the reins of it. But if you do that, you could also argue that if Doug takes the reins of this team and Doug calls plays and comes out saying in week 1 of the season, hey, I'm calling plays this season, and it doesn't go bad. That's all, and it doesn't go well. I apologize. Yeah, and it does go bad. Those same conversations and all that vitriol and ire that is going towards Press Taylor right now is then redirected to Doug Peterson, and now you're messing with his legacy of even being a top 5 to top 10 play caller, and that is a different conversation.
Very. I mean, that could affect a lot of things for Coach Peterson down the line. Also, let's reiterate for those that may not remember, we as media casters on Pro Sports Fans, we here on the dive last season. I know I'm always harsh on people who criticize play calling by just saying, oh, that was terrible play calling. You need to deliver me details. And it was suspicious how we never got details in particular on what exactly was wrong with the structure of a play in and of itself. So yeah, we've been on this train of being like, yo, it's execution for a while, right? I'd say into late last year, because there were times where we would bring it up as something worth investigating. You then did the homework as you do and started to be like, what do you think about it? And it was long before that bomb you dropped. What is it? Was it this past Monday or the Monday before? I forget now, but like
over the last few weeks about Trevor Lawrence's turnover.
I can't lack of it because it's still coming up because it's such a relevant topic, bigcatcountry.com, by the way. Bing. So, I can't, if you truly believe execution was the issue as such, you make sense as to why one should actually consider Press Taylor and all of it. So no, I think that was a very succinct explanation as you tend to do on this show. So with all that, let's get into this, man.
Yes, Lord.
The conversation started to be had about who the most underrated Jaguar is. Now, Travis is a good Christian man, and apparently I'm a giant a-hole, so I'll go ahead and say it. Everyone out there that's trying to tell me that Parker Washington is underrated, stop it! I can't stop hearing about this damn guy, and I like him a lot. He's fun to watch in camp. Let me go get some game film. Oh, wait. Okay, what are we doing? Great receiver on an excellent core that isn't seeing the field because they got a great core. I'm looking forward to the day they parlay him into some assets or somebody gets hurt and he steps up and breaks out in a very special fashion. All right. There was a receiver who I gave the nickname the secret weapon some time ago in the previous edition of the Student of the Game podcast. Bing! And it fit very nicely with his name. He returned kicks for punts for good yardage. He was used in trickeration for short plays and runs. He could beat people down the field. And the Dolphins traded him. You know what happened? He went from being the secret weapon to being just the weapon. Wes the Weapon Welker, as I used to call him. Travis knew where I was going already. So
Yeah.
could it become Parker the player Washington one day? I don't know. But
That's
in the
fair.
meantime, he's still a secret weapon, and but thusly not underrated. And I know before we even start the segment, I know Travis D. Holmes is there thinking, well, my offensive line buddy, totally gonna bring up Walker Little. I'm not.
Oh.
That party started. The music is still booming through the damn club. I'm still Walker Little. He's still dancing the dance. How could he be underrated at this point?
Okay.
So I just want to get that out the way because I heard your intimations when we were texting. Well, I know who you're going to pick, Nash.
Yeah.
Put Anton Harrison in the thumbnail just to play with people. It's not Anton Harrison. We know who Anton is now. He done showed us. God bless that man.
Yes, Lord.
Food takes and all. Right? So when we're talking underrated, I can't have been talking about him. The only starter on offense I could currently make the best argument for is Evan Ingram. We ain't been talking about this Humpy Bumpy. It's not happened.
That's fair.
Okay? Way ahead of Walker Little. I know that. He's not my choice. But that's a guy who could probably get the and actually I saw just as we were airing this show, I've sent it to you on Twitter. Shouts again. See, I talk trash on the road, but shouts to my guy John Shipley. Dropped an article on Jaguars on SI bing, about Evan Ingram being voted the most underrated Jaguar in 2024. I buy it.
Yeah.
We've been saying for the past 3 weeks, at least on this show, why is no one talking about Evan Ingram? And then we move past not talking about Evan Ingram. So anyway.
I know why people aren't talking about him, though. It's because of how the team used him last year. They used him more as a check down machine because the running game stunk. And now he gets over 100 catches, but those catches weren't as impactful because they weren't being able to use him more down the field in that longer intermediate range or even down the seams.
Yeah,
if they're able to use it better this year, then he may get 90 catches or 80 catches, but they may be more impactful and for more yards. And I'm here for that, man.
They should use him better this year. Now, you know what the key to all that is? Bam! Mega. Making team great again.
Let's go.
You saw that on the YouTube channel if you watched. Anyways, now that I went on my ramble of who I'm not going to pick and spoiled a lot of people's dreams of who yours included, apparently, about who you think I'm going to pick, Travis Holmes, who are your guys that you think are the hidden gems of the Jacksonville Jaguar roster?
All right, so let me start with my honorable mentions because I think these are a little bit easier to get into before we start getting into the meat and potatoes of who I chose and why. Devin Duvernay. I'm personally a big fan of how this kickoff rule is being implemented, but more importantly, how impactful these plays might be. So, I mean, this is more like a running play. It's more like maybe more like a running play or mixed in with the punt return. And if you like Jamal, if you like someone like Jamal Agnew, getting way more punt return opportunities, like they're without the fair catches, I'm here for that. If you can tell me Devin Duvernay is going to get, I don't know, 5 to 10 kickoff returns in maybe a 3 or 4 game time frame, then I have a feeling that he's going to have 40-yard averages and possibly a few touchdowns. And then if you've seen the LXFL how that was, I'm like, no, this might be more impactful than people realize, and they might get to the point where they're kicking the ball out of the end zone for that. So I felt like he at least deserved an honorable mention there.
As someone who covered the XFL last year, covering the Orlando Guardians for the 3-point conversion, bing. Mm-hmm. I'll say this, and I'm not a member of the Duval Dive such as you are, Travis, but the fact that Jamal Agnew isn't in the building to run this style of kickoff, man, I'm a little annoyed. I would like to have seen how that would have gone. And hey, maybe I will at another team. Anyways, go ahead, Travis.
No, you're not wrong. I mean, it's actually curious that he hadn't been signed by someone specifically just surrounding this rule, but it could be a money conversation. It could be the fact that right. It happened late in the preseason or training camp.
They're going to need a guy. It'll happen during camp.
Right. And that's really what it's going to come down to. But it's just weird to me. Again, maybe he wants a bigger role in the offense. Like, I don't know what it may be at this time. But my other honorable mention, I'm going with Cooper Hodges, just because we already had the rumors into last season where he's a rookie coming in. he could potentially challenge, for that right guard spot. Maybe if Brandon Scherf gets injured, and Brandon Scherf he's been gimpy the last few seasons.
Correct.
That's a great guy to have there, and he may not be to the level of Brandon Scherf, but he may not. He doesn't have to be. He just has to be average, above average range, and now already that is a hit. So like I feel like he at least deserved that mention.
If I were to pick a lineman, it would be him. That's a great call by you.
If you were to pick a lineman, it would be him. Ooh, I
Yes.
like this then. Because then my last honorable mention, before I get to I say no, it's not my last one. All right, so let me just knock these two out. Antonio Johnson. We already love Antonio Johnson. Everybody knows it, so I can't really get into that. But the man had over a 70. What was it? A 73.8 PFF grade last year, and from between weeks 10 and week 18, man in the slot for Trey Herndon.
You mean he's a guy deep in the roster that actually saw the field and wasn't just Parkering himself on the bench, right?
Correct.
I mean, I'm saying this really the day after we're celebrating Washington. See, I'm dad joking the hell out of this.
But more importantly, he's not getting the mention more so from most people because they just don't know what to do with that defense. Like right now with Ryan Nielsen and Chris Jennings.
The room's getting crowded
Jenkins.
too.
Right. And who's going to be in the slot? Where is he going to be? Is he going to be at safety? Kind of just all of that. So because of that, he's not getting the notoriety that he probably deserves just based on the limited sample size we've seen in those 8 weeks. And finally, of course, Devon Hamilton, man. Like, what are we doing? Like, that is the guy who was entering the season before his preseason spinal abscess. Hamilton, he just had put up a 75 PFF grade, 74.9, and that placed him 18th out of 64 interior D linemen. He was a really solid D lineman option, and we just forgot about him because he got, I can't even call it injured. It was a medical issue, man. But if he's anything close to what he was pre his medical issue next to Arik Armstead, what are we doing? That's an explosive season. And we are absolutely talking about him.
Also, with the departure of Foley Fatukasi, he's only would get an opportunity for more exposure. I think that's why it's a great pick. I got nervous about his medical situation. Only reason why I had it because I had him in mind, Travis. Because the Texas said there's 2 of these I really like. And neither of them were Hodges, but he should have been a third, in fairness. The fact that just stuff, whenever you use the word spinal, I get it, right?
Yeah,
that's stuff that ended Al Wilson in Denver at the linebacker position. That's what canceled out Priest Holmes eventually. Like it has claimed some talented names. So I get really nervous. And I'm prepared to get dunked on by this large man. I want to see that happen. If you could step in and fill the gap that Fatukasi, listen, man, I love me some Foley. You know this. Anybody who's listening to the show, I'm a little sad when the Texans done snagged him, But hey, now that it's Morris versus Foley, could work out better for the Jags depending on the down. But the punchline is this, guys. That there's so much potential, but too much risk for me to have put him on there. But I like you voiced him an honorable mention.
Yeah, but now we can get to the meat and potatoes because I'm about to piss all of Duval off, and I know I am, and I don't care because it's the truth. And we got to be able.
Caring now.
We got to be able to have difficult conversations. So we got to do that. All right. So in 2022, this person had PFF's pass and run blocking grades above 80% in both areas. That placed them as 32nd at their position. In 2023, they had an 87.2 pass block win rate, which again placed them 31st at their position. They struggled in run blocking at 67, which that was 39th at their position. So overall, this person was 33rd in their position last season. They had a run block rate of 4.9%, which was 29th at their position. So that's right, everybody. We are talking about someone who is basically between the 29th and the 32nd ranked center at their position. That's right, everybody. Here's Duval County's favorite man to hate. You hate him, and you hate that you may need him. Luke Fortner, everybody. Give him a hand. Give him a hand. Give him a hand. That boy bad. That boy, but whatever it may be, hey, man, no matter how the data is used, he's ranked in that 29th or 33rd area. He's arguably and kind of literally the NFL's best backup center. And he's our backup. Like, and he's on a rookie contract. What is not to love there? Like, I know we hate the man because of everything that he quote unquote did last season by not being to the level that we wanted him to be. But again, you were talking about someone who's like legitimately back end of all NFL centers, which also makes him legitimately one of the best NFL backups. Get him out of hand. Come on. What we doing?
Travis, how did you find a way to use the Mac Jones defense for Luke Fortner? What just happened?
Hey, man, it is what it is. But like, we know we have Mitch Morris, and we also know Mitch Morris has had 6 concussions in 8 seasons and was before 2 years ago considering retirement at that time. Like, there's many articles written about it from the Buffalo media. You might need Luke Fortner. And you have to be able to have those difficult conversations and say, hey, man, this dude legit might be one of the better NFL backup centers. And there is some value in that. And everybody seems to be down on him. And I understand exactly why. But at the same time, hey, man, having him as a backup that's key. And that could end up being huge in a 2 or 3 game sample size if Mitch ends up going out. So, yeah, that's what it is.
You know, first of all, I got to give a shout out here in the comments. We got our dude Mike checking in, getting the joke entirely as delivered. Ranked 33rd of 32 starters. Woo!
That means he's ranked first in all the backups. Let's go.
You know, I knew that was going to be your response. That's why I showed the comment. But hey, I also had to throw some flowers at my fellow mega campaign zealot. Make NCAA great again.
Right.
Here's the thing. What makes that argument land and why you actually just made the best case for one of your underrated guys, if Hodgins is in and is making an impact at guard and can actually help Fortner when he's going to get in trouble, that's what makes that actually work. Hodges is the key to that, not Fortner. Fortner's in the room because of seniority. You know, I like where you're going, where he can, if Mitch is going to get a concussion, which, I mean, there's plenty we pointed out on the show, and we don't hope for it, obviously,
right.
But there's precedent, right?
Right.
You know, this is Troy Aikman had 10, right? Like, it's a thing. You know, if he has to miss time, the support of the guards will help the center through, and they'll be using more double teams to neutralize guys that are big in the middle. If he's going to miss the game against the Browns, let's say, Mitch Morris, that ability to do that would be huge. And see, Mike comes in, he's still digging you though. What is it? How many teams truly carry backup centers? 100% agree with the underrated take in this context. Yeah, most backup centers typically are guards that they
they're swing.
100% correct. You know, but I'll say this: what makes that work would be Hodges as the hidden gem more than Fortner, in my opinion. But your defense, if not fun to listen, was intelligently made.
The basic split between me and Hodges, between going Hodges and Fortner, was only the fact that Fortner simply had, like you said, seniority. Simply, he had more tape, so I can convincingly say this is probably who he is over the 2-year time frame. He is 29th to 33rd over 2 years. This is likely who he is. Whereas Hodges, I still have to see more tape on him because, again, he got injured so early in the season last year, and we just haven't seen it in live when the bullets start flying. That's all.
See, I'll put it this way. If we were staying strict to the 30-minute window, I'd cut the show here. But since we have a little freedom at the moment, you make all these points about seniority and helping things and former starters and former impact players stepping up as others. Why aren't we talking about Ronald Darby as an underrated player?
Oh, he absolutely is underrated. But the problem is he has so much tape and so much original conversation when he was signed, and they didn't draft a specific outside corner early, that the thought process is kind of that he's going to play that role, but then there's the equal opportunity that they might put Jari outside. So I don't know. It felt like he had a lot of conversation originally. So he could be on that list, and I would probably even put him in an honorable mention category. But he's played so dang well and has so much good film and so much advanced data out there that I don't know if that would put him as underrated. Like, he plays so dang well at that for Baltimore.
How, with all those accolades he has, I've only heard you know who I've heard him talk about most, other than just this past week on Jaguars on SI for the first time in amongst the Duval Dive?
Mhm.
On the Barking Browns pod, they brought him up. And if
Mhm.
Browns fans are scared of him from his time on the Ravens, why aren't the Jags more excited about this?
I think the Jags like the new shiny stuff. They
Well,
everybody like the new shiny. Like,
see,
and new shiny is Jarian.
yeah, it's Jarian, it's PTJ. Yeah,
Mhm.
there's a lot of new shiny out there. I will grant you, it's getting excited about. You know what else is new and shiny? Getting extensions and grown Jaguars that are getting second contracts. That's
Bro,
shiny and
bro.
Duval.
Everybody love new shiny so much that we talking more about Parker Washington than we talked about Christian Kirk so far. Come on, let's
Oh!
talk about it. Let's talk about it. You've probably seen more articles, you've seen more highlights, you've seen more all of this about Parker Washington because he is newer than the older jalopy Christian Kirk, who's going to consistently give you that 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns or whatever it is. No, 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 no. Give me Mr. Consistency, sir. Give me the thing that I know, the known product, before you give me the Bitcoin. Like, no, no, no. That is that's where I'm at, man. I'm here for consistency and a known product. So yeah, to your point, Ronald Darby. To my point, Christian Kirk. Yeah, same thing.
So before we go out, I gotta give Mike his credit because he I normally would cut the show here, but he actually asked some good questions I want to
Okay.
address. First, he asked me, would I cut Fortner if Hodges showed you in preseason he could play center? That's the tough question. Well, okay. So and listen, Mike, great question. Why
Huh.
do you think I'm taking the time to address it? That's two different scenarios, in my opinion. What I described for what will work on the field is different than roster management, right? The scenario Travis posed was for 2 or 3 games. I think Hodges at guard makes that work for 2 or 3 games. I would never cut Fortner if what you say is true. I'd try to get something for him because I think I could. I can make, if I would have Travis be on the line when I'm pitching, who's somebody with a garbage O line? I don't know. The
Oh
Raiders, the
Lord,
Titans are pretty bad. You know, like
the Cardinals.
what's that?
The Cardinals.
The Cardinals. Actually, hey, listen, if Fortner has experience blocking for Trevor, it's not the same as Murray, obviously, but he has the basis to block for a mobile quarterback, sneaky mobile, I should say. And all of that, you know. Mike makes a great point here. He throws in the Giants. Sure, the Giants line is terrible, TRBL.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could bet. I bet I could
get a you can get a mid to late. You can swing a mid to late or something like that for Fortner, who has enough tape out there. I would think.
Yeah, I would be looking for at least an early third day pick, if not a late second day pick, right?
Oh,
So
Trent loves his fifth and sixth round draft picks. Well, that man gonna be itching for it at that point. Yeah.
maybe you get 2 of them. Hell, I don't know. But the punchline's this: like I could get commodity for Fortner, and I think that kind of speaks to the point you're making. But yeah, that would be if and only if I felt like Hodges was somebody who could call schemes and shift the line and get the intelligent part of the game right. And that's what we don't know enough about, which is why I wanted to address this question. I'm not saying that Fortner doesn't have it up here to shift the protections. Maybe this is a guy who can do calculus in his head. Okay. Right. He could be a sharp dude that knows how to make the calls, but doesn't have some of the physical tools. Maybe that's possible too. And if he is that intelligent guy and he can handle being out there making the calls, he would know to call for Hodges to help him in a double team in this or that situation. So I think that's why that question is simpler than what's actually posed in our conversation. And then Mike breaks in with an interesting take. Let me get your reaction to this, Travis. He's not big on Darby per se, but a solid backup in his opinion. If he's that solid as a starter, why has he been moved around so much? Actually, see, here's the thing. I think a lot of teams move DBs around because after the top 1 or 2, you start getting piecemeal because that's where a lot of teams apt to save money because they're investing in the blitz, right? Is it something like
that's exactly what I'm thinking. Like, it's the fact that at his age, he's been he's been in the league so long, and at his age, it's more about I'm getting that new young guy coming in the next season, and I'm not willing to invest those kind of resources into someone like Ronald Darby if I feel like I can get even close to that level of that level of performance with the younger guy. It might not be that level, but it may be close enough where I'm fine with it. And they've always considered, Darby as that Band-Aid guy who just played really well, and then he's a Band-Aid guy for the next team and plays really well, and he's a Band-Aid guy for the next team and plays really well. And meanwhile, he just hasn't been able to just stick with one team because of I don't know what you want to call it, ageism. Like,
well, ageism is real at corner, right? Because you start to lose speed as you get older. I mean, and let's think about this too, right? Troy Vincent was a guy in Philly who was a great corner, right?
Yeah.
They had a history of great corner duos there for a minute. I used to remember their names better than I do, but going back to, I'll put it this way: the main reason I think he was moved around is because as he got older, he got slower, but still had the intelligence to play safety, right?
Right.
So,
but my point on Darby is that he might not be the guy he once was, and he still is going to have certain limitations in certain situations. However, he's still going to be a very, very solid corner, and especially if you have a great deep line or a great defensive front, he's going to give you above average performance. It's just a question of roster management and if you're comfortable paying him this amount for that performance over a 1 to 2 year time frame.
And let's reiterate, he's not there to be the one or two guy, right? It's Tyson Campbell, it's Savage, and then he's going to be amongst the group trying to get in with the rest, right? I mean,
that's going to be the fight. And I could absolutely see a scenario where he starts the season off as the starting corner, and by the middle of the season, you see that progression be made, and it's like, maybe it feels like Jarian's stepping forward on the outside, and then they're going to just transfer him inside and at certain occasions, play a slot, and then figure it out that way,
Yeah. I can make an argument. There's some who would argue probably that he will be the two by the end of the season. So that's another great point.
Right. So at the end of the day, again, Darby, I believe, would be someone who to consider for that list, but I just didn't have him there because he's shown you enough that I think he's convincingly good. It's just the question of how long he's going to be good without dealing with injuries or dealing with those things that come along with older age.
So somebody who shows you he's good, no dice. Somebody who shows you he's not, nailed it. Got it. Anyway,
someone who's gosh. All right. I'll give you that one. I can't even argue. You can't make me a Luke Fortner stand out here. That's crazy.
No. That's not a fair description of the argument either. I just had to make the joke, man. I listen. Unlike other politicians out there, okay, I'm willing to admit that was complete BS. I dumped you on. Anyway, Travis Holmes, tell the world, my guy.
You can find me on all the socials, Travis D. Holmes. You can find my writings covering the Jaguars on BigCatCountry.com. Whether it's press conferences, training camp summaries, take a look at our YouTube channel, the Duval Dive. I believe we're about a month old at this point. Like and subscribe. If you're not, come on, man. What you doing? You know what this is. Like and subscribe. Get a hold of your life. Get some organization. We are 2024. You ain't got to live like that no more. Get better sources for your Jacksonville Jaguars coverage. Come on. But yeah,
to Emmanuel Acho.
Hey man, BigCatCountry.com. The Duval Dive YouTube. You can find me on South Florida Tribune, Inside the Pigskin on Tuesdays. We cover all of NFL football, but I'm always going to have my Jaguars takes, and I'm also going to give you something, hopefully from a perspective you haven't heard from any other people in the national media. So, take a look at that. And yeah, Duval Dive, Fridays, 11 a.m. Where can you be found, sir?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Travis D. Holmes, he watches games. Anyways, of course, I am Kyle Nash, student of the game. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at the SOTG. Find me on Facebook as a student of the game. Check out my writing with Jaguars on SI, the Black and Gold Banneret, and the 3-point conversion, as well as my other podcast, the Student of the Game podcast, Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Going to be starting NFL previews for the entire league. That's right. Wednesday marks the start. We start with the AFC West. Booga Peters going to come in, help me out with that, as well as Colin Cronin from the Irish NFL show. And, of course, Brian Paul himself, BP from A7B in Sports. That should be a lot of fun. So, for Travis D. Holmes, I'm Kyle Nash, student of the game. Until next time, everyone, class dismissed.
So.